Hi guys, this is Steven Slayton here, and I am going to be reading a couple stories for you guys. This is my first video that I'm making like this, and we're just gonna feel it out. So we will see you guys with the first story. Thanks for tuning in, by the way. Alright guys, so this first story is posted by Burnt Schmidt. It's titled, The Night My Babysitter Turned Evil. Growing up, I had a babysitter. Grandma Etna. She really wasn't my grandma, but we'd become so close, I preferred to call her as such. By the time my dad died, Grandma Etna's mind had begun degrading a bit. Early stages of Alzheimer's disease, perhaps, but this was never confirmed. The first vivid recollection I have of this occurring was one evening after school. My mom had to stay at work late, and into the evening hours, she began acting strange. I was in my room playing a video game when I heard a noise in the living room. The piano. I quietly crept out into the hallway and listened. Prelude in C-sharp minor. A song both beautiful and foreboding, stemming from the bleakness of Leninist Russia. She never played that piano, not in 9 years. I didn't even know she could play. In fact, I asked her before if she could, and she said she never had. Surely at age 67 she wasn't learning at home in secret. She didn't even own a piano. I continued playing my game in silence when bang! Edna slammed one of the low keys on the piano. As its echo reverberated throughout the house for several seconds, I stopped, turned around, and got so startled I threw my controller halfway across the room. There she stood, in my doorway, in her dark, shadowy outline, still and unmoving. "Grandma, is everything okay?" She slowly backed away and walked back out into the living room. I was startled once more when the silence was broken with Prelude again, only this time the keys were being hit so hard it sounded like she was punching them. Then it stopped. My nerves were absolutely frayed. I turned once more and almost fell backwards. She wasn't just standing in the doorway. She was in my room, making a groaning sound. Croaking like a frog. That's funny that I just made that noise. "Grandma, you're scaring me." She was holding something in her hand. Too dark to see, she again walked out of the room. Ooh, this is freaky. Then again, Prelude, being snatched against my keys in rigid spurts. The song was no longer flowing, but punctuated by bangs followed by silence and echoes. Before moving on to the next part, this is when I shut my door and locked it. Soon the playing stopped, my game was paused, and it was silent. The next part sounds like a cliche, but when it happens to you in real life, it's terrifying. I watched the beam of the hallway light underneath my door before being obscured by 2 feet facing my room. "Greg, I'm home." It was my mom. Thank God. Relaxation washed over me, however, I hadn't seen lights or heard her car door shut. The garage was under my window. Without care, I crawled across the bed and opened the door and nearly fell backwards. This guy likes to fall backwards. It was Grandma Etna. She'd just spoken literally in my mom's voice. Slowly, she walked into my room towards me. She had an angry grimace on her face, her false teeth gnashing so hard that the top had become dislodged and was hanging out of her mouth. Her eyes were opened extremely wide behind her glasses, and she had a look of pure hate. As I backed toward my dresser, she put her arms out, like she was going to strangle me. Taking large, wide steps forward, as fast as I could, I jumped up onto my bed, crawled across it, and bolted out of my room, and ran outside into the front yard directly across from the living room window. She threw open the drapes, her silhouette black against the living room lights, and just stared at me, before turning around and sitting back at the piano and began playing Liszt's La Campanella, one of the most difficult songs ever written on piano. But that's not the most frightening part. She played it pitch perfectly. while staring at me through the window the entire time. Not once did she even look down at the keys as she moved along flawlessly. Suddenly, I see lights glaring across the yard and see my mom's car pull into the driveway. Relief. I looked back into the living room. She was gone, back in the kitchen playing solitaire with her cards as she usually and always did. I knew I was safe, but I didn't want my mom questioning me about being in the yard at night. So I went back in the house. There sat Grandma Etna, and I only glanced. I noticed something utterly horrific. She wasn't playing solitaire. She was ripping out pages of the Bible. Ooh. I made my way into the kitchen. When out of my peripherals, I could see her halt and her head slowly turn in my direction. I pretended not to see until she spoke, but not in her voice. It was deep, guttural, and a malevolent voice. And she said very simply, "I would have done it." I couldn't speak. I just stood there, petrified, as my mom walked in. She quickly tossed the Bible and ripped up pages in her purse and began speaking in her everyday voice. Grandma Etna didn't even acknowledge me on the way out. I told my mom about everything that happened and she was stunned. My family knew I wasn't a liar and I wasn't that kid who made up sick fantasies. Grandma Etna called over that weekend and she said she can't babysit me because she's in the hospital. She died that Wednesday of pneumonia. At the viewing, I saw all of her family devastated by the loss. I was close with her niece, Melissa, and I asked how it came on so suddenly, and Melissa said it was a blessing. I asked why, and she told me. Grandma Etna's mind was going. She was having hallucinations and began cutting herself. She's at peace now, wherever she is. On that night, the night she changed, after she left, my mom called me into the kitchen. When I walked in, something happened that still haunts me to this day. "What's this doing out?" my mom asked me, holding a large kitchen knife that had been laying on the floor right under the chair Grandma Etna was sitting on. The end. That is a really cool story. And I hope this dude made this up. But if they didn't, that is pretty freaky. Alright, for our second story tonight, which will be the last one, just because I am trying to figure out how to make these videos and I am not sure as of the layout of what I'm going to do yet, but we will read one more from Cosmic Guy 101. It is titled, The Feeling. I never thought that something scary would ever happen to me. I guess I thought I was special, as if I would never be put in danger because of someone. Well, I guess something. I lived in a northwest town. I lived in a town in northwest Montana. The community was amazing, and I always felt safe and comfortable. I'd love to go on walks in the front yard, unsupervised, but one night that all changed. My perspective on this quaint little town shifted for the worst. It was a cold evening night. My children were at their mom's, so I was alone in my house because it was winter and dark outside around by 6, like dark, void of light. Because I had no kids, it meant I could finally get some rest. Some well-deserved rest. I went to bed pretty early. Call me a grandpa or an old man all you want. But I was out by 8:30. I don't remember much before I fell asleep. But what I do remember after I woke up haunts me to this very day. I woke up at 3 a.m. on the dot. Confused, I decided to go get some food for a late night snack. But as I passed the staircase leading into a dark abyss, I felt a sudden urge to walk up the stairs. A gut-wrenching feeling filled my body. Each step I took caused this feeling to hurt more and more. I rounded the corner facing the master bedroom door. I ever felt in my body shiver in terror. Well, your grammar is very nice, my friend. Right outside my door, a humanoid creature was standing, tall and sleek. He, or I, guess it had long arms, and over its face was a brownish bag, a similar bag to a potato sack. But it wasn't over its face, it was a part of it. But the scariest thing of all was its grin, a wild mouth with skinny lips and sharp teeth, as if this was otherworldly. In its right hand there was a knife. He slowly started walking towards me, and I ran. I booked it down the stairs and hid in a closet. I waited for whatever it was to open the door, and my life would flash before my eyes. But there was nothing. No creaks from the hardwood floor. No noise at all. The house fell silent. I started counting in my head, hoping whatever it was had left. I don't remember much, but all I do remember is that after a while of counting, I fell asleep. I woke up back on the couch. Confused, I got up and decided to get some water. As I passed the stairs, I got the same feeling. I looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. I realized whatever just happened to me was a sick dream, but now it was actually happening. I thought to myself, maybe I'm just dreaming, so I decided to pinch myself, but I was still awake and aware. The urge to walk up the stairs to see if the sick beast was there rained down my body, but I resisted the urge to move. I was frozen in fear. My fight or flight kicked in, and luckily I chose flight. I booked it out of my house and ran to a neighbor's to call the police. I'm glad I was close friends with the neighbors and they let me in without any issues. Once the police arrived, they did an investigation and found nothing unusual. No forced entry, nothing seemed to be stolen to my knowledge. Everything looked the same. My neighbor said I was free to sleep on the couch, which I did. The next morning I went over back to my house. It was around noon. I decided to make some lunch. I walked up to my kitchen. I got some bread and whatnot to make a sandwich. I went to reach for a knife to cut my bread, but that's when I noticed the knife was gone, a big one. I was confused for a moment, but then the same feeling came, the feeling to walk up the stairs, the pain in my stomach. I felt my body freeze and adrenaline start to pump. Even though it was the middle of the day, I still felt scared. I went to the base of the stairs and asked, why me? Then there was nothing. The feeling I once had vanished. I gathered the courage to walk up the stairs, and on my wall, spelt in blood, was, "It's fun." The knife was lying on the floor right outside my bedroom door. I moved out a week later. Now my house feels a lot better. I'm glad I didn't walk up those stairs. I wonder what would have happened if I did. Jeez. That's also a freaky story. Well, I hope you guys have an amazing night and or day. Sleep well or be awake for the rest of the day. Like the video if you liked it. And thank you. I will see you guys in the next one.